People say the ocean is beautiful, but they only talk about the daytime. At night, 30 miles off the coast of Florida, the ocean turns into a pitch black abyss. And out there, if you scream, the only thing that answers is the silence. It was late July. I had just fixed up an old 30-foot cabin cruiser I bought in Miami. To celebrate, my best friend Leo and I decided to go deep sea fishing and spend the night on the water. By 8 p.m, the sun went down. We packed up our gear, went inside the cabin, and started playing poker. Everything was perfect, until it wasn't. Wait, Mark, shut up for a second. Do you hear that? I muted the radio. Over the sound of the waves, there was a heavy boat motor running. But when we looked out the window, there was absolutely nothing. No navigation lights. Total darkness. Whoever is out there, they're running blind. That's illegal and insane. The sound got closer. It sounded like they were circling us. Then, the engine just cut off. Silence. They were out there, floating, watching us. My cabin lights were on, meaning we were a glowing target in the dark. Leo was panicking. I didn't want to use the spotlight to give away our exact position, so I just turned the key, hit the throttle, and drove blind for about 10 minutes away from where we heard them. Turn on the spotlight. Now! I flicked the switch. The beam of light sliced through the darkness. I swept it from left to right, and my heart dropped into my stomach. Less than 50 feet away, a rusty, beaten-up skiff was floating right there. Two silhouettes were standing on it. I immediately killed the light and slammed the gas. We ran for another 20 minutes before I felt safe enough to drop anchor again. I woke up in a cold sweat. Someone was walking on the roof of my cabin. I looked at Leo. His eyes were wide open in pure terror. I grabbed a flare gun, kicked the cabin door open, and stepped out onto the deck. Hey there, buddy. Whoa, put the gun down. Didn't mean to scare ya. We've been stranded, out of gas. I was just coming to knock on your door. Every alarm bell in my head was ringing. If they were out of gas, how did they follow us? Why were his hands covered in dark stains? And why did he climb onto my roof instead of knocking on the side? Name's Arthur. Just need a little help, neighbour. Shake on it? I knew if I let him grab my hand, I was dead. I didn't say a word. I dropped my shoulder, charged forward, and shoved him with every ounce of strength I had in my body. Leo, cut the anchor line. Now! I didn't look back. I drove at top speed for almost 3 hours straight until I saw the lights of the Miami coastline. We never called the Coast Guard because technically we pushed a guy into the ocean. But I know what I saw in that man's eyes. They weren't looking for gas. You don't stalk a boat in the pitch black with your engine off just to ask for fuel. Out there in the deep ocean, there are no cops, no cameras, just predators and prey. And that night, We were almost the prey. A luxury cruise is supposed to be a floating paradise, but people forget one terrifying fact. Once you're out in the middle of the ocean, it's just a massive metal cage. And if you wander into the wrong part of that cage, there's nowhere to run. It was the second night of a 4-day cruise from Miami to the Bahamas. My friends were partying hard at the ship's club, but I was hit with a blinding migraine. My stomach was turning, probably from the cheap buffet seafood. I told my roommate, Ryan, that I was heading back to our cabin on deck 8. The doors opened, but it wasn't deck 8. It was some restricted maintenance deck. It smelled like heavy machine oil and stagnant water. My head was pounding so hard I couldn't think straight. Instead of pressing the button to go back up, I stepped out, thinking I could find a stairwell. That was my first mistake. I turned the corner and froze. At the end of a narrow sub-hallway, someone was standing there, facing the bare metal wall, completely motionless. I rubbed my eyes, thinking the migraine was making me hallucinate. Nope. No. Hell no. When I opened my eyes, it wasn't facing the wall anymore. It was looking right at me. I didn't wait to see its face. I bolted back to the elevators, hammered the button, and somehow made it back to my room. I locked the door, crashed onto my bed, and passed out immediately. I woke up in the dead of night. The room was freezing. I tried to sit up, but my body wouldn't obey. Sleep paralysis. I could only move my eyes. Over in Ryan's bed, he was fast asleep. But in the corner of the room, by the bathroom door, there was a shadow. It was the thing from deck 3. As someone who spends all day animating 3D character movements, I know how the human body is supposed to articulate. But this thing, it didn't walk. It glided toward me like a glitching 3D render, completely devoid of weight or physics. Its limbs hung dead at its sides. It stopped right over my bed, its jaw unhinged, dropping down twice as wide as humanly possible, revealing a void of blackness. And then it screamed. A sound so deafening it shattered the paralysis. My own scream bled into its scream. Bro, what the hell? What's wrong with you? I told him everything. He just rolled his eyes, said the bad seafood gave me a fever dream, and went back to sleep. My body was violently shaking. I didn't sleep for the rest of the trip. To this day, people tell me it was just sleep paralysis mixed with food poisoning. Maybe they're right, but if it was just a dream, how did my brain perfectly render a face it had never seen before? When you're alone in the middle of the ocean, your boat is your entire world. It's your sanctuary. But what happens when you realize your sanctuary has been breached, and the predator isn't outside in the water, it's inside with you? Last November, my family moved from Savannah, Georgia, down to a waterfront property in the Florida Keys. My wife took the kids in the SUV. I volunteered to sail our 35-foot fishing boat down the coast. It was supposed to be a peaceful 3-day solo trip. Just me, the ocean, and a few good podcasts. The first day was a breeze. By nightfall of the second day, the ocean was dead calm. I dropped anchor a few miles off the coast of St. Augustine to get some sleep. The boat was gently rocking, but sleep didn't come easily. I was lying in the dark, staring at the ceiling, when I heard it. Thump, thump, thump. Heavy footsteps pacing directly above my head. Boats make noises, wood groans, but these were deliberate steps. Somebody was walking on my boat. I grabbed a heavy flashlight and slowly pushed the cabin door open. Before I could step out, there was a massive splash in the water right next to the hull. Someone, or something, had just jumped overboard. Panic set in. I didn't care what it was. I just needed to get away from that spot. I fired up the engine and slammed the throttle forward. But as the boat surged ahead, thud, I felt a hard bump against the hull. Not a log, not a piece of trash. It felt dense, fleshy. I didn't stop to look back. I drove blind for 2 straight hours in the pitch black before exhaustion finally forced me to kill the engine again. I went back to the cabin. I locked the door behind me. I lay on the bed, perfectly still, trying to convince myself I was just paranoid, that it was all in my head. I held my breath to listen. And that's when I heard it. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't the waves. It was the distinct sound of human breathing. Wet, raspy breathing. And it wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from inside the cabin, from underneath the very bed I was lying on. Every muscle in my body froze. I slowly slid off the mattress, backed out of the cabin, and locked myself inside the glass cockpit. I wasn't going to sleep. I was going to sail straight to the nearest port. Through the cockpit, there's a small curtained window that looks back into the dark cabin. I kept glancing back at it. On one of those glances, I saw it. The corner of the curtain was slightly peeled back. Half of a pale face, framing a wide, unblinking eye, was staring right back at me through the glass. I had already radioed the Coast Guard. When I hit the docks, 2 armed officers immediately boarded my boat. They drew their weapons and kicked open the cabin door. 10 seconds later, they dragged a man out. He was soaking wet, shivering, wearing ripped jeans and a filthy t-shirt. He looked like a drifter, or worse. As they cuffed him and walked him past me, he locked eyes with me, and he laughed. This chilling, off-putting, raspy laugh. The police never got a word out of him. They didn't know who he was, or how he managed to board my boat in the middle of the night out in the open ocean. But the most horrifying realization hit me days later. That massive splash I heard, that heavy bump against the hull when I sped away, it wasn't him jumping off the boat. It was him clinging to the side, hauling himself out of the water and crawling into my cabin while I was distracted. He had been under my bed the entire night.